Part 1. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hung in silent orbit above the gas giant Xanthar. Its walls were made of polished obsidian and living crystal, shifting colors with the mood of the room. Delegates from 23 starfaring species sat in tiered circles, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. Some insectoid, some avian, others wrapped in shimmering energy fields. At the very edge of the lowest ring, almost hidden in shadow, sat Daniel Cruz. He wore a simple gray suit, no armor, no ceremonial robes like the others. His dark hair was neatly combed, his face calm, but his fingers tapped once against the arm of his chair, a small sign of the storm inside him. For 6 months he had come to this place every cycle, speaking for Earth and its allies. For 6 months he had been ignored, talked over, or politely dismissed as young, emotional, or still learning galactic ways. Today was different. The Council had gathered to finalize the peace accords with the Kavor, a warlike species that had spent the last 3 years raiding border colonies, destroying outposts and enslaving civilians. Instead of demanding justice or defense, the Council had chosen a path of compromise. They would grant the Kavor control over 3 disputed systems, offer trade concessions, and agree to limit military patrols near their territory, all in the name of stability. Daniel had argued against it from the start. He had presented intercepted Kavor transmissions, survivor testimonies, orbital scans showing weaponized asteroids being moved into position. He warned that the Kavor saw peace talks not as an end to conflict, but as a chance to regroup and strike harder. No one listened. Worse, they laughed softly, behind veils or chittering mandibles, but they laughed. Ambassador Cruz, said High Counselor Varel, his long, silver-scaled neck curving forward like a question mark. You have been quiet this session. Do you finally accept the wisdom of unity over force? Daniel stood. The motion was smooth, unhurried, but it drew every eye in the chamber. Even the floating scribes, tiny drones that recorded every word, paused mid-air. Wisdom, Daniel said, his voice quiet but clear, is not measured by how many compromises you make, but by how many lives you protect. A murmur rippled through the room. The Xanthari delegate shifted in her gel-filled pod. The growth envoy let out a low hum of disapproval. Earth has offered a solution, Daniel continued. A joint defense pact, shared early warning systems, mutual response protocols. Not to dominate, not to provoke, but to deter. To say clearly, if you harm one of us, you face all of us. He looked around, meeting each alien gaze in turn. Instead, you've handed the Kivor a map of our weaknesses and called it peace. Your species is new to the Council, said the matriarch of the Threll, her voice like wind through stone. You do not yet understand the cost of war. We do, Daniel replied. We've fought wars on our own world for centuries. We've seen cities burn, oceans poison, children starve, and we chose to rise above it. We built something better, but we didn't do it by giving bullies what they want. He took a breath. The room was utterly still now. Even the ambient hum of the station seemed to fade. For 6 months, humanity has sat at this table in good faith. We've shared our technology, our medical knowledge, our navigational charts. We've asked for nothing but a fair voice and the safety of innocent lives. And every time we've been treated like guests who forgot to knock. He straightened his jacket. No more. He paused and then spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy. Effective immediately, the United Earth delegation withdraws from all peace negotiations. We will no longer participate in this Council's discussions regarding the Kavor conflict or any related security matters. We urge you to reconsider your path, but we will not be part of its failure. Then he turned and walked out. No one moved. No one spoke. The doors hissed shut behind him and the silence stretched like a wound. Back in the human delegation suite, Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't rage. He simply sat by the viewport, watching the swirling storms of Xanthar below. His aide, Lisa Garrett's personal liaison, entered quietly. They're calling it a stunt, she said. Some say you'll be back by tomorrow. Let them think that, Daniel said. What do we do now? We go home. On Earth, news of the withdrawal spread faster than any Council transmission could travel. In Geneva, President Lisa Garrett watched the official feed with her advisors. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. Finally, she murmured. Meanwhile, across the Sol system, orders were quietly issued. Orbital shipyards powered up dormant assembly lines. Deep space listening posts switched from passive to active mode. Reserve pilots were recalled. Not for war, but for readiness. The council, however, remained in denial. They resumed their session an hour later, as if nothing had happened. They finalized the accords with the Kavor, sealed the documents in light-encoded crystals, and declared a new era of peace. But something had shifted. The humans, the quiet, earnest newcomers who always arrived early and stayed late, were gone. And though no one would admit it aloud, the chamber felt colder without them. Daniel's shuttle lifted off from Zenthar Prime that evening. As it broke orbit, he looked back one last time at the council station, glowing like a jewel against the stars. He felt no anger, only resolve. Humanity had offered its hand in partnership. The galaxy had shaken it politely, then turned away. Now Earth would stand on its own terms, not out of pride but principle. And somewhere deep in Kavor space, warships began to move. Part 2. After Daniel Cruz left the Galactic Council chamber, the universe did not stop. Stars still burned, freighters still hauled cargo between systems, and children on 100 worlds still played under alien suns. But something had changed. It was small at first, like a crack in a dam, barely noticeable but growing. The council tried to pretend nothing was wrong. They held their usual meetings, debated trade tariffs, approved new cultural exchange programs. They even sent a polite message to Earth expressing regret over the misunderstanding and inviting humanity to return when tempers have cooled. They did not mention the Kavor. They did not mention defense. They acted as if peace had already been won, but the cracks widened. The first sign came from the Deep Space Relay Network. For years, human engineers had maintained a chain of quantum comms buoys stretching from Sol to the outer rim. These buoys allowed near-instant communication across light years, something no other species had mastered. The Council used them daily, for everything from emergency alerts to scheduling lunch meetings between delegates. They never thought about who kept them running. Now the buoys began to go dark. Not all at once, just one here, another there. At first, the Council assumed it was solar flares or micrometeoroid damage. They sent repair drones, but the drones couldn't interface with the human-designed systems. Only human technicians knew the access codes, the calibration sequences, the hidden diagnostics, and Earth wasn't sharing. Within 3 weeks, half the network was offline. Messages that once took seconds now took days, routed through slower, older channels. Coordination between fleets slowed. Medical supply requests from distant colonies went unanswered for too long. Panic began to whisper through the corridors of power. Then came the silence from the Helios early warning array. This was a ring of 12 orbital sensors placed along the Kavor border, designed to detect ship movements, energy spikes, and weapon signatures. Again, it was human tech. Built by Earth, maintained by Earth, calibrated every 72 hours by human algorithms. Without those updates, the sensors drifted out of sync. False alarms flooded the Council's defense hub. Real threats were buried in the noise. Admiral Torvex of the Zenthari fleet demanded answers. "Why can't your engineers fix this?" he barked at the Growth science delegate. "We never understood the full system," the Growth admitted quietly. "The humans always said they'd train us. But we never asked." Meanwhile on Earth, life went on, but with purpose. In orbit above Mars, the carrier Ares completed its refit. Its hull gleamed under the red sun, its weapon systems humming with fresh power cores. On the Moon, lunar foundries poured molten metal into new frame sections for destroyers. In Geneva, President Lisa Garrett met with her closest allies, none of them council members. She signed mutual defense pacts with the free colonies of Proxima, the oceanic world of Thalassa, and the asteroid miners of Ceres Ring. These were small powers but loyal, and they had seen how the Council treated those who spoke truth. Daniel Cruz, now appointed Minister of Interstellar Affairs, worked from a quiet office overlooking Lake Geneva. He didn't give speeches. He didn't issue threats. He simply ensured that every human asset was accounted for, every treaty reviewed, every alliance strengthened. When a Kavor raider attacked a mining station near Titan, Earth response ships arrived within hours, before the Council even received the distress call. They drove the raiders off, rescued the survivors, and left without fanfare. The Council heard about it, of course. They called it reckless unilateral action. But privately, some delegates wondered why Earth could act so fast while their own fleets were still arguing over fuel allocations. Back on Zenthar Prime, tensions rose. The Threll matriarch accused the Zenthari of hoarding sensor data. The Growth blamed the Virex for slow repairs. No one wanted to admit the real problem. They had grown dependent on humanity's quiet competence, and now that it was gone, their unity was unraveling. Then came the news from Orlan 7. It was a small, neutral world on the edge of council space, rich in rare minerals, home to scientists and farmers from a dozen species. It had no army, only a peacekeeping garrison of 200 lightly armed troops. Under the new accords, it fell just outside the Cavor-controlled zone, but barely. One morning, its comms went silent. At first, the council assumed a technical fault, but when scout ships arrived, they found the orbital station in ruins. The surface cities were burning, and in the sky above, 3 Cavor dreadnoughts hovered like vultures. The attack had been swift. The Cavor hadn't just raided, they had invaded. They seized the mining facilities, enslaved the population, and raised their jagged black banners over the Capitol dome. They even broadcast a message: "The Council's weakness is our invitation." Panic erupted. The Council convened an emergency session. Voices rose, claws clicked, energy fields flickered with agitation. They voted to send a fleet, but no one could agree on who would lead it. The Zenthari wanted full command. The Threll refused to serve under them. The Growth demanded more intel before committing ships. Hours passed, then days. Meanwhile, Admiral Nora Ellis watched the reports from the bridge of the Ares. She was a woman of few words, with sharp eyes and a steady hand. She had served in the Titan skirmishes, the Ceres blockade, the Proxima rescue. She knew what delay meant. "Should we move, ma'am?" asked her first officer, a young man named Jake Morris. Ellis stared at the star map where Orlan 7 glowed red with distress signals. "Not yet," she said. "We hold position. Earth doesn't start wars, but if they ask, we'll be ready." On Earth, President Garrett addressed the United Nations. She stood at a simple podium, no grand hall, no holograms. "We did not leave the Council to abandon peace," she said. "We left because real peace needs strength, not surrender. We stand ready to defend the innocent, not for glory, but because it's right." Her words spread fast. Not through council channels, but through private networks, colony broadcasts, and freighter comms. People listened. For the first time, many began to see humanity not as newcomers, but as the only ones willing to act. The council, however, still refused to admit fault. High Counselor Varel gave a speech calling the Cavor attack an unfortunate misunderstanding, and urged patience and dialogue. But even his own aides looked away as he spoke in the shadows of Zenthar Prime. A new rumor began to circulate. Maybe the humans were right all along, and as the Cavor fortified their hold on Orlan 7, building weapon emplacements and jamming fields, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see who would move next. Page 3. The Cavor did not stop at Orlan 7. Emboldened by the Council's silence and the lack of resistance, they pushed deeper into neutral space. Their warships, jagged and black like shards of obsidian, moved in perfect formation, something intelligence reports had never predicted. They struck mining outposts, research stations, even refugee way stations. Each attack was faster, bolder, more precise than the last. It was as if they had studied the Council's weaknesses for years and were now exploiting them with cold efficiency. The Council finally sent a fleet, but it was too little, too late. Without the human tactical coordination system, known as the Nexus Net, their ships struggled to communicate. Zenthari cruisers fired on Growth frigates by accident. Threll scouts reported enemy positions that never materialized. Orders were delayed, misunderstood, or ignored. In the Battle of the Helios Rift, a full Council task force of 40 ships faced just 12 Cavor raiders and lost 8 vessels before retreating in confusion. Back on Zenthar Prime, blame flew like shrapnel. The Threll accused the Zenthari of cowardice. The Growth claimed their weapons had been sabotaged. No one mentioned that the Nexus Net, designed and maintained by human engineers, had been offline for weeks. No one wanted to admit they had thrown away their best tool for unity. Meanwhile, Earth watched, not with satisfaction, but with growing concern. From the bridge of the Ares, Admiral Nora Ellis reviewed every intercepted transmission, every sensor log, every refugee account. She noticed something the Council had missed. The Cavor weren't just raiding, they were mapping. They targeted relay stations, navigation beacons, and fuel depots. Not for loot, but to control the flow of movement through space. They were preparing for something bigger. They're not just testing us, Ellis told her staff. They're clearing the board. On Earth, Daniel Cruz met with President Lisa Garrett in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. The room was plain, steel walls, a single table, 2 chairs. No windows, no distractions. They're going to hit a council core world, Daniel said. Maybe Xanthar itself. Garrett nodded. And if they do, the council will collapse. Chaos will spread. Billions will suffer. We could stop them, Daniel said quietly. Our fleet is ready. Our intel is solid. We know their patterns now. But if we act alone, Garrett replied, they'll call us aggressors, warmongers. They'll say we caused the war to prove ourselves right. A long silence filled the room. Outside, snow fell softly on the mountains. We don't need their approval to do what's right, Daniel finally said. No, Garrett agreed, but we also don't want to become what we're fighting, so they waited. Not out of fear, but strategy. Earth would not strike first. But if the Kavor crossed a line, if they attacked civilians on a council homeworld, then humanity would respond. Not as a council member, but as a force of its own. The line was crossed sooner than expected. The Kavor launched a surprise assault on Varel's home system. High Counselor Varel was Threll, and his people lived on a ringed world called Silva 9. It was not a military target. It had no fleet, no weapons factories, only schools, hospitals, and ancient forests. The Threll were scholars, diplomats, historians. They had not fought a war in 500 years. Yet the Kavor came at dawn. 3 dreadnoughts emerged from warp just beyond the moon. They fired orbital kinetic rods, tungsten spears moving at near light speed into the capital city. Buildings turned to dust. The central archive, holding millennia of galactic knowledge, was vaporized. Thousands died in minutes. The council was stunned into silence. Even their emergency channels failed. Too many relays were down. It took 6 hours for the news to reach Xanthar Prime. By then, the Kavor had already left, leaving behind only smoke and silence. High Counselor Varel stood before the chamber, his silver scales dull with grief. They knew, he whispered. They knew we would not fight back. They counted on our peace as weakness. That night, a secret message was sent, not through official channels, but through an old human freighter captain who still traded with Earth. It was addressed to Daniel Cruz. It contained only 3 words. We were wrong. Daniel read it in his Geneva office. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply forwarded it to Admiral Ellis with one instruction. Prepare for joint operations. On the Ares, Ellis gathered her senior officers. We're not going to war for the Council, she told them. We're going to war for the people they failed to protect. Stay sharp, stay humane, and remember, victory means saving lives, not just destroying enemies. Across the Sol system, human ships powered up. Carriers launched fighters. Supply convoys rerouted to forward bases. Medical teams packed trauma kits. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a quiet turning of the tide. The Kavor, sensing the shift, accelerated their plans. They gathered their fleet near the Helios Rift, a narrow corridor of space that led straight to Xanthar Prime. They believed the Council was broken. They believed no one would stand against them. They did not count on Earth. And they did not know that human engineers had already reactivated 3 key relay buoys along the rift. Not for the Council, but for themselves. Now every human ship in the sector could share data in real time. Every pilot, every gunner, every medic was part of one seamless network. As the Kavor Armada formed up, confident and cruel, a single human destroyer named the Liberty slipped into position at the edge of the rift. It sent no message. It made no threat. It simply waited, and behind it, hidden in the asteroid fields and dark folds of space, the rest of the human fleet gathered like shadows before the storm. Part for par. The envoy arrived on Earth in a small unmarked shuttle. It bore no council insignia, no official seals, not even a transponder code. It landed at a quiet spaceport in northern Canada, far from Geneva, far from cameras, far from history. The being who stepped out was tall and thin, wrapped in a gray cloak that shimmered like fog. Its face was hidden, its species unclear by design. This was not an official visit. It was a plea. Daniel Cruz met the envoy alone in a simple wooden cabin near a frozen lake. There were no guards, no recorders, no translators. The envoy spoke basic English, learned in secret, practiced in shame. High Counselor Varel sent me, the envoy said, voice low and rough. He cannot come himself. The others would see it as surrender. Daniel poured 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to the envoy, who hesitated before accepting it. Surrender is what you've already done, Daniel said. To the Kavor. Not to us. The envoy looked down. We thought we were being wise. We thought peace could be bought. Peace can't be bought, Daniel replied. It has to be defended. Silence settled between them, broken only by the wind through the pines. The envoy sipped the coffee, winced slightly. It was too hot, too bitter, but did not set it down. The Kavor are gathering at the Helios Rift, the envoy said. They plan to strike Zenthar Prime within 10 cycles. Our fleet is scattered. Our systems are failing. We cannot stop them alone. Daniel didn't react. He already knew. Earth's deep space sensors had tracked every Kavor movement for days. Admiral Ellis had battle plans ready, but he waited. He wanted to hear the words. We were wrong, the envoy said, the phrase heavy in the cold air. Not just about the Kavor. About you. We saw your passion and called it immaturity. We saw your strength and called it arrogance. We took your help for granted, then acted as if we never needed it. Daniel nodded slowly. Humanity never wanted to rule the council. We only wanted to stand beside you as equals, to share the burden, not carry it alone. We understand that now, the envoy said. Too late, perhaps. But we ask, no, we beg for your help. Not as subjects. Not as juniors. As partners. Daniel looked out the window. Snow fell softly on the lake, turning the world white and still. He thought of the children on Silva 9, of the burning cities on Orlan 7, of the years Earth had spent offering solutions while the Council offered excuses. We will help, he said at last, but not under the old rules. The envoy tensed. What do you ask? Full voting parity in all security matters. Shared command authority in joint operations. Human officers will have equal say in fleet movements. And immediate ratification of the original Defense Pact, word for word with no changes. The envoy was silent for a long time. These terms would reshape the Council forever. They would strip away centuries of hierarchy, of tradition, of quiet dominance by the oldest species. But the alternative was annihilation. I cannot promise it alone, the envoy said. Then go back, Daniel said. Gather those who still have courage. And vote, the envoy stood. If we agree, will you come? We're already coming, Daniel said. But we won't follow orders that put our people at risk just to soothe egos. We fight smart. We fight together, or we don't fight at all. The envoy bowed, a human gesture learned from old recordings. Thank you. As the shuttle lifted off hours later, Daniel sent a secure message to Admiral Ellis. They're ready. Begin coordination. On the Ares, Ellis opened a new channel, one that linked directly to the Council's emergency command, bypassing all old protocols. She uploaded the human tactical net, the Nexus system, and granted temporary access to Zenthari, Threll, and Grolth fleet commanders. At first they hesitated. Then one by one they logged in. Within minutes their ships began to sync. Targeting data flowed, shield frequencies aligned, formation patterns updated in real time. For the first time in months, the Council fleet felt whole again. Not because they had fixed their own systems, but because humanity had reached back. Meanwhile, on Zenthar Prime, a secret session was called. Only 7 delegates attended, those who still believed in survival over pride. They debated through the night. Some argued that accepting human terms was humiliation. Others said survival was no shame. In the end, they voted, 6-1. The Defense Pact was ratified. Command authority was shared. And a joint signal was sent to the human fleet. We stand with you. Ellis didn't cheer. She simply turned to her crew. Update the battle plan. Include our allies. Full integration. As human and council ships began to move toward the Helios Rift, something unexpected happened. The Zenthari admiral sent a personal message to Ellis. Your father served with mine in the HFY War. I never understood his respect for humans. Now I do. Ellis saved the message. She didn't reply. But for the first time, she felt something close to hope. Back on Earth, President Garrett addressed the world, not through grand speeches, but through a simple broadcast. We do not fight for glory. We fight so that no child has to hide in a bunker while their home burns. We fight so that peace means safety, not silence. In the cabin by the lake, Daniel watched the stars. The envoy was gone. The decision was made. The real work was beginning. And somewhere in the dark between stars, two fleets, one broken, one steadfast, were finally learning to move as one. Part 5. The battle began not with a blast, but with silence. At the edge of the Helios Rift, where space narrowed between two dead stars, the Cavor Armada waited. 37 warships, black and jagged, engines humming with stored violence. They expected a broken enemy, scattered, slow, confused. They did not expect what came next. First, the human destroyer Liberty sent a single pulse, a test signal. It bounced off the Cavor shields and returned clean. The data flew instantly through the Nexus net, shared with every allied ship in the sector. Within seconds, targeting solutions locked. Shield harmonics adjusted, fighter wings powered up. Then from the dark folds of the asteroid belt, the human fleet emerged. Not in a grand line, but in staggered waves. Carriers behind cover, frigates flanking, cruisers holding the center. Beside them, Zenthari ships fell into position, their biohulls glowing faint blue. Threll scouts darted ahead like silver fish. Groth gunships rumbled low, shields flared and ready. The Cavor hesitated. Their commanders had trained for council tactics, predictable, rigid, slow. This was different. This was fluid. This was one mind. Admiral Nora Ellis stood on the bridge of the Ares, hands clasped behind her back. She didn't shout orders. She didn't need to. Her fleet knew the plan. They had drilled it for weeks, refined it with allies for days. Now they executed it with calm precision. "Engage," she said. The first volley came from human railgun platforms hidden in the asteroids. Tungsten slugs punched through the void at hypersonic speed. Two Cavor ships flared and died before they could raise full shields. Chaos rippled through their formation. Then the fighters struck. Human hawks and Zenthari stingwings weaving together, targeting engine clusters and sensor arrays. The Cavor returned fire, but their shots missed or glanced off allied shields now tuned to human frequency patterns. For the first time, the Council fleet moved as one body, dodging, feinting, striking in perfect rhythm. In the command center aboard a Zenthari flagship, Admiral Torvex watched the battle unfold on his organic display. He saw human cruisers draw fire while Threll medships rescued damaged Groth vessels. He saw a human pilot sacrifice his fighter to shield a Zenthari scout. He turned to his aide and said, "We spent years doubting them, and they never stopped protecting us." Back on the Ares, Ellis received a message from the Cavor flagship, a demand for surrender. She deleted it without reading the rest. The tide turned at the rift's narrowest point. Using data from reactivated human buoys, the Allied fleet triggered a controlled collapse of a nearby microasteroid field. The debris cloud blinded Cavor sensors just long enough for a flanking maneuver. Human and Threll ships slipped behind the enemy line and struck their command dreadnought. Its core ruptured in a silent bloom of fire. The Cavor fleet, suddenly leaderless, faltered. Signals scrambled. Formations broke. What had been an invasion became a rout. Within hours, it was over. 29 Cavor ships destroyed. 6 surrendered. 2 fled into uncharted space. The Allied fleet held the rift. No civilian worlds were lost. No cities burned this time. In the aftermath, there was no celebration. Only relief, exhaustion, and quiet respect. Human medics treated wounded Zenthari. Groth engineers helped repair a Threll cruiser. On the Ares, Ellis walked the hangar bay, checking on pilots, shaking hands, saying nothing grand, just good work and rest now. On Zenthar Prime, the council convened one last time in its old form. High Counselor Varel stood before the chamber. His scales dull, but his voice strong. "We came close to losing everything," he said. "Not to the Cavor, but to our own pride. Today we do not rebuild the council. We begin something new." The old charter was dissolved. In its place, a new alliance was born. The Galactic Defense Pact, signed by Earth, the Zenthari, the Threll, the Groth, and 12 other systems. It granted equal voice to all, required shared command in crises, and placed defense of civilians above all else. Daniel Cruz signed for Earth, not as a junior delegate, but as a founding architect. In the weeks that followed, alien diplomats visited Earth for the first time, not to lecture, but to learn. They walked through human cities, watched children play in parks, sat in quiet cafes. They studied Earth's history, the wars, the recoveries, the choices to build rather than destroy. They began to understand why humanity had walked away, and why they had come back. Daniel stood with Varel on a hill outside Geneva, looking at the Alps under a clear sky. "You could have let us fall," Varel said. "We're not like that," Daniel replied. "Why not?" Because strength without mercy is just another kind of weakness. Varel nodded. He would remember those words. Far above, in orbit, the Ares prepared for its next mission. Not war, but peacekeeping along the new border. Admiral Ellis reviewed patrol routes, her face calm, her resolve unchanged. She knew threats would return. Galaxies did not stay quiet for long. But now they would face them together. And in council halls across the stars, a new lesson took root. Humanity did not need permission to be great. They had offered their strength as a gift. And the galaxy, after nearly losing it, finally learned to hold it with care.